Okay, when you're trying to get the domain and range of the graph of a function, then this is the best way to think of it. So for the domain, you want to move left to right and use the x-axis like a tape measure to measure how wide the graph is and leave out any gaps. If you're asked to find the range, then you move from bottom to top and use the y-axis to measure how tall the graph is, and then you leave out any gaps. So what do we mean by that? Okay, well, let's have some examples here. All right. So suppose I'm asked for domain and range of that. All right, so for the domain, I'm going to move from left to right. I can see I have a leftmost point here. I can see it's contained. So I'm going to fill it in here on the x-axis. And then I keep moving. Make that a little bit thicker. I have points here until I get to -4. If I look up or down, there's not a point, so I have to leave that one hollowed out. Then I've got a gap. I pick it up again at -3. And then if I look up, I have points. I have points until I get to 2. And if I look up or down, there's not a point on the graph at 2. And so I'm going to hollow that out. And then once I get past 2, I've got points until I end at 4, and that point is filled in. So what I've drawn there in red is the domain, but you'll be asked to give your answer in interval notation. So moving from left to right, we're starting at, and we include -5, and then we've got no interruption until -4, and -4 is not included, so we have to draw it with a parenthesis. Then we have a gap. So I have to put the union symbol in. If you're typing this, just use capital U. Then we start up again at -3, and -3 is included. Then we go uninterrupted until we get to 2. And so we do have a gap at 2. We have to jump over 2. 2 is not included. And then after 2, it's unbroken until we get to 4, which is the ending. Okay, so our domain there is what I've written there in red. Okay. So now, how about range? Well, if we're asked for the range, I'm going to use the y-axis to measure how tall, going from bottom to top. So I can see there's my lowest most point. So I'm going to start at -3 on the y-axis. And as I'm moving up, if you look left or right and you can see a point, you don't have a gap. So I get here at -2, I look left, there's no point, that's not included. I look right, there's nothing. So I do have to hollow that out. Then I look left or right, there's nothing until I get to 1, and I do have a point there. And then as I'm moving up, if you look left or right, if you can see at least one point, there's no gap. So when I get to 3, there's not a gap, because yes, it's true there's no point here, but there's infinitely points there. Same thing there. There's no gap at 3. And then I finish this off at +4, and 4 is included. Now if I'm going to give this an interval notation, you must read it from bottom to top. So I'm starting at and including -3. Then there's a gap. I pick it up again at -1. And then it's unbroken up to 4. Now anything else is wrong. I have a lot of students who'll read this from top to bottom. This is wrong, because this is no longer an interval. In an interval, you have to have the smaller number first, then the larger number. Okay, so just make sure you remember that. Okay, so that's that one. So what I want to do now is I'm going to make a few changes. Alright, So I'm going to just make one change. Okay. And that makes all the difference now. It's going to change the domain and it's going to change the range. So what's the domain? Well, I'm going to start here. And then when I get to 4, it's included because I do have a point who has x-coordinate -4. And then the rest of this will okay, I don't have anything at 2. Okay. So for this one, the domain has changed. It's going to be -5 to -4 inclusive. Okay, and then I have a gap. Alright, so that's where it's different. Now what about the range? Well, oops. Okay, I have to change my drawing. So I think I changed it to that. Okay, so for the range, go from bottom to top. Now I do have a bottommost point and it's at -4 and it's a singleton. So I'm going to put it in brackets, or you can put it in square brackets. But you cannot do that. Can't do that. Okay. So I can write those either way. I think WebWork usually has the curly brackets. So I'm going to start here and I just have a point. Then I pick it up and I think it's mainly going to be the same. And it'll be the same as it was in the previous one. Okay, so we have the singleton of -4, and then we have that's a bottom to top, or in this form. Okay, so WebWork usually likes that way. Okay, but either one of those is technically correct. Okay, so let me move down. What about something like that? Okay, well, for domain, I go from left to right. I have no left limit here. So this is actually coming in from -infinity. All right, so that's going on forever, and it's coming in from -infinity, and then I reach -4, I look up or down, there's not a point. Then I pick it up again at -3, and that point's included. And when I get to 4, there is no gap. Because if I'm just before 4, I've got points on the graph. When I reach 4, there is a point on the graph. And then when I get past 4, there are points on the graph. So there is no gap there. And then I finish it up here with 5. And 5 is included. So my domain is going to be left to right. That is my domain. Okay. All right. Now, if you try and write this using a lot more intervals there. That is not correct because there is no gap there. There is no gap between 4 and the next number after 4 on the number line on a ruler. There's no gap. So that is not correct. Okay, so don't try and write it like that. All right, now what about the range? Well, this is horizontal. Now, some students will come here and they'll do that. And that's not true. Because it's true that point is hollowed out, but you've got infinitely many points there. So you come here and this is filled in. Then moving up, you look left or right, there's nothing, and we start there, we do not include. Then moving up, I look left or right, and as long as I can see a point, there's no gap. All right. And that's going to be this one. So my range, bottom to top, so it's at -3, and then we go from the open interval, -2, and close it up at 4. That's the range for this one. Okay, and I think I might have done one more. Let's see. Okay, if I change this one, how would I change this one? I'm not sure how I would change it. Okay, let's okay, so just making a little change. Yeah, how about I okay, and then I do this. Yeah. Okay, what's that going to be? Well, the domain. Oops. For the domain, I'm going to come in from -infinity and then not include -4. Then there's a gap. And I pick it up again at -3, which is included. Alright, so I'm coming in that way. And then there is no gap at 4 because I've got points here, then I've got points at 4, and then I've got points beyond 4. And then this continues on forever. Okay, it's always a parenthesis for plus or minus infinity. And then the range, well, we start here, so I just have a singleton, and then so there's a gap there, I pick it up at -2, and then that's going to be it. What do you mean that's going to be it? Well, and don't stop there, it goes on forever. What do you mean it goes on forever? Well, look at that. That goes on forever. So, starting here, when I look, after I get past -2, when I look right, there will always be at least one point. Now, they did it really sneaky here because the arrow here is lower than that. So my range is going to be that. Okay. So just making one little change here and there drastically alters what domain and range could be. Okay, so these were really complicated examples. And so I'm going to stop there, and hopefully this video gives you enough to tackle anything now.